We are examining the oldest constant in the equation of flavor, salt. Let's pause for a moment and think. Could we create such delicious meals without salt? If there were no sun, would the colors in nature have any meaning? Just as the sun illuminates the world, salt colors and vitalizes cooking. Without it, even the highest quality ingredients remain flat, shallow, and dull. In this second episode of the 5 Tastes series, we will unlock the secrets of how sodium chloride changes the destiny of a dish. The magic of salt in the kitchen is actually a reflection of our survival instinct. The human tongue works like a radar for sodium ions because sodium is a vital fuel that maintains the body's water balance and nervous system. The moment the specialized ion channels on our tongue detect sodium, they send an electrolyte balance achieved signal to the brain. This is an evolutionary reward mechanism provided by nature. When the body gets what it needs, the brain rewards us with a pleasure signal. But when did this story begin? For our hunter-gatherer ancestors, they fed on raw or coal-roasted meat. Animal tissues already contain the sodium necessary for a living creature to survive. When our ancestors ate meat, they were getting salt as a package deal. However, everything changed about 10,000 years ago when we transitioned to settled life and started the agricultural revolution. As our diet became dominated by grains and vegetables, the body's sodium balance was shaken. Plants are poor in sodium. Therefore, humans were forced to seek external salt supplements. Tracing the history of salt was essentially tracing the root of civilization itself. People built cities where they could find salt, started wars over salt mines, and rebranded it as white gold. What began as a critical biological necessity evolved through the discovery of preservation and flavor, eventually transforming into the most indispensable gastronomic addiction of our culinary culture. Contrary to popular belief, salt's true mastery is not just about providing its own taste. It is a hidden catalyst that increases the volatility of other aromatic compounds within the dish. Technically speaking, salt lowers water activity, making it easier for trapped odor molecules to escape and disperse into the air. For example, when you add salt to a soup or sprinkle a pinch of sea salt over freshly baked bread, salt creates an explosion that releases aromas. Thus, your nose begins to perceive the character of that food much more clearly and deeply. Salt is the most important element that makes flavor visible and brings out the true character. However, salt's most surprising power is its ability to suppress bitterness on the tongue. A pinch of salt added to very bitter coffee or a slice of grapefruit occupies the bitterness receptors, allowing the hidden sweetness of the fruit or bean to take center stage. This is exactly why dark chocolate sea salt caramel is one of the greatest strokes of genius in modern cuisine. Salt breaks the one-dimensional cloying sweetness of caramel and the harsh bitterness of dark chocolate, building a magnificent bridge between contrasts. It defines the boundaries of sugar, balances and softens bitterness, and creates a complex, deep profile on your palate. When we shift our perspective, we see salt's massive impact on texture. Especially when cooking meat, salting long before cooking allows the salt to penetrate the protein fibers. Once inside, salt relaxes these protein fibers like a magnet, helping them hold on to water. The result is a seared exterior and a soft, juicy interior. If you only add salt at the moment of cooking, it stays on the surface. You never touch the soul, the center of the meat. Which salt, when? All salts are not created equal. Their chemical structure and crystal forms dictate how they interact with food. Table salt, industrially fine and uniform. With high flowability, it's the go-to for precision recipes like pastries, where micron-level distribution is key. Kosher salt, large and flaky, loved by chefs for its haptic feedback, easy to pinch. It's the gold standard for coating meats before searing. Sea salt, evaporated from the ocean. Rich in minerals like magnesium, it adds a subtle oceanic depth to sauces and daily cooking. Maldon flaky salt, pyramid-shaped and crunchy. Not for cooking, but for finishing. It creates a textural contrast and a sudden flavor explosion on the tongue. Himalayan pink salt, extracted from ancient seabeds, colored by iron oxide. A mineral-rich all-rounder used for both grinding and aesthetic presentation. Rock salt, the Earth's purest form. Dense and mineral-heavy, it is ideal for long-term processes like pickling or freshly ground in a mill. The rule for perfect flavor architecture is simple. Use fine or kosher salt during cooking for depth. Use flaky sea salt during service for a final touch. the pasta boiling process. It's not a myth that your pasta water should be as salty as the sea. It's a necessity. As pasta boils, starch granules swell and begin to absorb water. If the water is unsalted, the pasta pulls in only tasteless water. When the water is salty, the salt penetrates to the very heart of the pasta, trapping flavor from the inside out. No matter how good the sauce is, the core of an undersalted pasta will always be missing something. Color and texture management in vegetables. Adding salt to the water when boiling vegetables creates an osmotic barrier that prevents the sugars and nutrients inside the vegetable from escaping into the water. This way, the vegetable retains its own taste and stabilizes chlorophyll to preserve its color. But remember, not every vegetable reacts the same way. Mushrooms. Salt immediately breaks down cell walls and releases the water inside. You should sear mushrooms on high heat first and add salt last. Otherwise, they stay boiled and limp in the pan. Eggplant. Conversely, salting eggplant before cooking draws out bitter juices and excess moisture, giving it a more intense flavor and a texture that doesn't soak up excess oil. Onions. Caramelization. If you salt onions too early, they release water and sweat. If your goal is crispy, caramelized onions, leave the salt for the end. If you want soft, melting onions, add the salt at the very beginning. This timing difference in the kitchen is the thin line between an ordinary meal and a professional dish. The right amount of salt at the right time doesn't just make food salty, it brings the food's own taste to us in its purest form. In conclusion, we must stop seeing salt as an enemy or a simple white crystal. It is our most loyal ally and the most powerful amplifier of our flavor orchestra. If something feels dull in your pot and you are sure you use the right ingredients, the problem is likely not your ingredients, but the lack of the correct sodium ions to awaken that flavor. The next time you reach for the salt shaker, know that you aren't just adding a taste. You now know how salt rules your food at a molecular level. You pour those crystals knowing exactly how they will soften texture, release aromas, and domesticate bitterness. In this episode of our 5 Tastes series, we examined salt, the fundamental mortar of flavor architecture. The most ancient philosophy to remember about salt is this: salt is invisible when it is present in the dish, but its absence condemns the plate to nothingness. It is the most humble and indispensable actor in the kitchen, sacrificing itself to make the other ingredients heroes. This is Science of Cooking. Our class is dismissed for today. If you enjoyed this journey at the intersection of molecular science and culinary arts, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Here, we don't just cook. We prove that the kitchen is actually the most delicious laboratory of applied physics and chemistry. Now, I want to hear from you. What is the one ingredient where salt creates the biggest miracle for you? I'm waiting for your hidden heroes that you say could never be without salt in the comments. I'll be reading through them to discuss each one. I'll see you in the next episode. Stay with science.